Okay, so we're moving out of pencil. And we're gonna go, you know, more into this kind of thing, right? So, you're seeing sort of what we were talking about last week with this kind of idea, or was it last week? I think it was, right? I talked about stone. Yeah. It's kind of idea here, and if you notice, thinking about where my line weight is hitting in relation to light. This, I think, was a pretty gray day. I remember right. So I think it was pretty diffused. So I probably just set, you know, a light. You know, a little heavier on the overhang. What's fun about pin to me, I love this kind of stuff, right? I just always like this kind of stuff. So a lot of interpretation here, like this is an interpretive idea for the trees. And I like the way they sort of fade off on the bottom. You know, now I could even push that further if I was doing a graveyard or something. Could really push that, you know, all the way, you know, if the ground was down here, my graves were here, and it would start to indicate, it would start to suggest like fog or something, because these things are fading as they hit the ground, right? Because I don't have the advantage of tone in this case, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Then just big broad strokes, you know, and, you know, building the same way, geometric shapes, and then just putting enough up here to kind of finish the idea off. Then silhouetting, you know, you do this and it sort of pops the silhouettes, right? Then I started playing around putting some lighter values down here, but then I didn't, okay? Now, this kind of thing, I have one here I don't really like that much, but I can use it. I came in, and this is gouache, okay? This is Prisma, right? So why did I use gouache? Because I wanted to get a more, where the values were shifting and just get a little more, you know, it's more opaque, it's more white, right? And I wanted to come in and carve out these trees a little bit, these silhouettes, right? Which I think is just a little bit of gray marker. A lot of times I won't even use a gray marker because this is already a mid-tone value, right? So I don't need to. Same thing, dark here, all that kind of stuff, okay? Now, we're gonna be going to March Field. See, these are all little demos from March Field, okay? Really quick. Now, I usually start off with something like that when I get there because I want to do something simple.
Is that a helicopter?
It's just a little plane. It's like a little weird. There's all kinds of weird little planes there. If it was a helicopter, it would have rotors. That one's a helicopter. So quick, you know, 5-10 minute sketches maybe, right? Now, you can see we're starting, we don't have tone, right? So now we've got to start our hatching idea, right? I can also do it with marker. So you're starting to get a combination here where I'm using the marker to sort of knock a core into that cylinder. Does that make sense? Right? So, you know, and then I'm still doing a little bit of hatching, breaking it up.
This part.
Yeah. And then this is over at a different museum. Another quick ones. This was.
So do you draw with pen the same way you would draw with the pencil?
No, it's different.
Okay.
It's totally different. Like I mean, I might, when I'm drawing with pen, I might like come back here. If I'm drawing something organic, I might come back here and hold the pen way back here and start finding organic forms this way, because it's sort of the same as when I hold a pencil this way.
Yeah.
Because I want to stay really loose.
Okay.
Right? And the thing with pen is that everybody thinks, okay, once you put a line down, I'm committed to it. No, you're not. You know what I mean? This is an inky pen. I like inky pens, right? But you might want to use one of the fiber tip pens. They're not as inky. That's fine. That doesn't make any difference, right? And I also don't really advise going in with pencil ahead of time. Why?
It will stiffen up when you ink it over.
Like then you're starting to go into like, oh, this is, I got to go in and ink it down. It's going to get all stiff and tight. Plus, you're starting to learn confidence, hopefully, with this idea. You're starting to go, I'm throwing that down, man. I'm committing, right? Now, again, that doesn't mean that I am committed. It just means that I'm throwing it down and I'm starting to knock in. And if I keep it as loose and light as I can, even with this, I can build it up the same way as I do with a pencil. And when I start building my lines up, the other ones will sort of disappear. And then you get, which I like, you get some of, I don't even even see them that much in here. You know, if I looked in here, I'm sure I'd find them. Like little leftover construction lines and things like that, which I like. I just like the way that looks, right? I've lost most of them in here, but they're there, right? So, you know, and then I came in here, and if you notice, like with something like the tire, I'm following that form. Here I'm not. So what am I doing? I'm making design decisions here. Here I'm following the form, right? Then here I didn't. Now that's plane. This plane is also different than this plane. This plane is wrapping around the tire. This plane is actually a flat plane. So I kind of did it this way because it's a flat plane facing me, right? Now, you know, this, I'm just making a decision just to knock a value in there. It's not following the form. I just think that would look overkill there. So I don't really feel like I need it. And then this is following the form under the fuselage, or the, is that the fuselage? The whole main part? This is following the form a little bit under the underbelly of the plane. Does you see that? Now, do I always have to do that? No, I'm not doing it. A little bit here. This is sort of following the perspective idea of the ground plane. Okay? Same thing here. Actually, all these are.
The shadows, right?
Yeah. And then this is just using a big dark mass for the shadow. So it was just kind of going over a couple different ideas, right? Now, when I go in and do, let's find a better one.
So how many values do you use in these?
I don't sit around and think about that.
Okay.
And by the way, I'm not saying that all those things are bad. What I don't like about them is then you're starting to get back into that systemic way of thinking.
Oh.
And I think there's a place for that, okay? I want to make sure it's like, I'm not saying, oh, that's bullshit. I'm not saying that. There's value in that too, right? But it's, if you notice, people who do that, they tend to draw really stiff.
Yeah.
And they tend to not really have a style, really, because they get into this very mechanical way of thinking that for me personally isn't very interesting. You know what I mean? But we're still getting a very hard surface idea here, right? But they still have a little bit of personality, right?
So you just use your eye to judge the value? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to go in and go, I got enough value, it's fine at some point. Does that make sense? Now, when I'm doing these things like that, or any of this stuff, you know, and you have sort of this shape, you know, I'm coming in here and being really clean with that hatching. You know, I want them equidistant for the most part, and just clean. You know, what people do is then they start going, okay, now I'm going to cross hatch. And you're going, why are you even cross hatching there? It's not necessary. Then they'll come back in here and go, now I'm going to cross hatch up here. And now I'm going to go over here. You know, and it's just like, what is this showing me? Okay? Now there's a place for cross hatching. I don't really need to do that here that much, right? Does that make sense?
Do you recommend using a light value though to like block in the shape?
No.
No?
I'll just go for it.
Just go for it?
Yeah.
Got it.
The whole thing I say about this, for me, you want to get good at throwing it down. Like, no bullshit, no, I need this, or I need that, or I use this system, or I do that. It's like, I'm throwing it down. Okay, there it is right there. I'm throwing it down. Or out of your head, okay? You want a plane banking through the, okay, throw that down. Like, throw it down. Not, okay, wait, let me do my boxes and my grids and my bullshit.
But not even for like a guideline line, or like kind of like to...
Like a what? Oh, you're gonna put, you're building guidelines a little bit, you know.
With the marker though.
No.
You know what I'm saying? No.
With a Copic marker to like block
You
it in.
could.
Yeah.
I mean, you could. I'm trying to get away from that right now.
Gotcha.
I don't think those are bad things.
Okay.
Okay. But for the purposes of what we're doing, I don't want to do
You
that.
want to build that confidence.
I want to build the confidence, and I want you to really see what you're doing.
Got it.
And instead of going, and then I
Overthinking
just,
it.
okay, so then what I get when I get that is sort of everybody's doing the Doug Chang thing and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, okay, now you're dipping back into like somebody else's visual language, which I'm not interested in. Okay, I'm interested in your own visual language. Okay, so I'm doing the opposite of what a lot of teachers did when I was in school, which are trying to make you disciples of them. I don't want disciples of me. I want people to do their own thing. You know what I mean? And develop your own thing. So here's some other ones. We've got just a little hint of color to them.
So have you used the brush pen, the ink brush pen, like the fans you have over there?
Brush pen where?
Oh, Is this part?
Nah, it's probably not brush pen. I
Oh.
think that actually that's a I think that's a pilot or a flare.
Oh, okay.
For
Right.
the blue, the airplane used to have right?
Is it also
This
the
was.
same as the other pen you use, or like?
So these are all just variations, and I think that's the one I did in the video. I think, and just variations on these things, right?
So
Now,
do you use your eye to judge the shape of the wings?
Yeah.
Like it should be
Mhm.
about this long.
yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about this when we get there.
Okay.
A lot of what we're doing in this trip that I want to be very clear on is sort of what we were doing. So we did this in an organic sense over at the museum, where it was about that a lot to me is about spatial relationships. Okay, this is also going to be about spatial relationships. Okay, same idea, but just on location, right? Same idea, but Prismacolor. What do you call that? Prismacolor and then paint marker.
Signal white pen.
Yeah. So we're always going to have. I like to have this and this, or gouache, or sometimes I'll use this. That's a thinner version of it, because I want two levels of highlight. I want specularity and I want highlight. Does that make sense? So those two things put together will give me those two things, right? Here's another one. I mean, you can see the blocking right there, right? And then, and then I'll refine it. Or this one. So this one's relying much more on marker value. This is the same thing, only Prisma. This is gouache, right? And obviously just popping it with the gouache, right? I had a student who's so non-design thinking. He goes, "That thing's glowing crazy, man." I go, "Jesus, dude, what's wrong with your eyes?" And by the way, it's been reinforced to me because I see his stuff online. I'm like, he has no idea how to think. He literally cannot think like a designer. He just can't do it. He posts stuff all the time. And it's like, I don't even know what this is. Like, I don't even know what this is. You know what I mean? Like, what is this? A lot of fanboy stuff. He's already got a bachelor's, and it's like, and of course he's working a regular job because he doesn't have any skills. Okay, so this one is a really quick one. I remember this one. And then let's see if we have.
Is that a Japanese airplane?
I think usually I put a little note on what they are.
I mean, there is.
I think it is because of that. What were you saying?
There is because of the sun.
Yeah, the sun.
Yeah, so it probably is. Let's see what this one. I'm trying to find. Yeah, so here you're getting. So what we're doing here, and this like bullshit complexity back here. You see that? Like it looks like there's complexity back there, and if you really look at it, there's not. Okay, it's just using some value and a little bit of hits of whatever. You can see I abandoned the guy right there. Decided not to put him in there. The white outline thing to pop it. You got to be very careful with this.
Yeah.
Okay, like there's a student here who does this all. There's a couple of them that do this all the time because it's like an art center thing, but it's like their drawings aren't strong enough. So what happens is when they outline this with this, it just flattens the whole interior of the drawing because the drawings aren't very good. They're and it sort of will highlight a bad drawing. Like if you got a lot of wonkiness in your drawing, don't ever do this. It won't work. Okay, it'll highlight the bad qualities in your drawing. Okay, just like if I have a real sketchy drawing and I go, I can get through a discussion in a meeting with that, it's okay. But if I go in and I start cleaning that thing up, it's going to fall apart. It's going to show all the wonkiness I have in that drawing. But if I just keep it loose like that, I can get through it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to highlight the bad, and I might go, I don't want to take the time to do that to refine it. If I'm just going to go in and have a discussion about it, and everybody might go, I don't like that. So I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it. I just want to go in and go, hey guys, I'm thinking this. Then if they go, yeah, everybody likes that, then okay, now I might do another round.
You care a lot about making the right cast shadow.
Well, I'm looking at them.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at what's in front of me,
Okay.
right?
What markers would you recommend? Like,
But yes, I do. I mean, I'm not going to put the shadow over here if the light's over here. Light here I think was pretty high above,
Yeah.
and probably here too. But I mean, it's right in front of me. In this case, now if it's not, I'm gonna go, I get tired of this over discussion of lighting. And you go, okay, the light's here, you know, I can cast it off over about here, right?
Yeah.
And then they go, okay, you know, and all this nonsense, and it's like, or I've done enough observational sketching where I know where I can put it. And am I gonna plot it all? And there's certain cases where sure, I might. I don't think I ever have.
Yeah.
But you know, and wherever I put that thing, as long as this is lining up or whatever, it's gonna be fine. You know what I mean? Like this stuff, I keep hearing people in drawing classes and they keep talking about the camera. And I'm like, whoa, 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 slow down here. Like you need to learn how to draw from life, and then we can apply that to how it works in a cinematic environment or whatever you want to use it for. Does that make sense? Like, if you start talking about the camera right off, everybody's like, that's confusing to me. If I was a student, I'd be like, well, wait a minute. But what's going on in the real world? I just want to know what's going on in the real world. And then there's a lot of over languaging of lighting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like,
Ambient occlusions.
yeah, and it's great. It's great to know all that. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that because it's not, you know, because I study all that stuff too. I get it. But then the reality of working for 20 years, you go, it all went out the window, and I go, I know how to draw. I don't need all this bullshit. Now there's a time where you do, where you go, okay, I got to get this really accurate. Okay, that's fine. But if I'm doing this kind of thing, it's like, yeah, light's over here, it's cash out, it's fine. And the other thing I'm using this for is to ground this drawing, right? Just to ground it. Gives it a big graphic shape, right?
What do you use for that?
This one here,
No, yeah.
the cash out,
Marker?
this was, I think, was just a Sharpie,
Okay.
a fat Sharpie. These are great.
So what do you do for the blue color?
I'll show you that in a minute.
Okay.
So, and then when we're doing this highlight thing, you know, if you're, let's just talk about this guy. Let's talk about, you know, if I'm doing this now, okay, so another thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to probably come in here and I'm going to really broad stroke this. But one of the main things I look for, I'd make this up, but I'm not warmed up yet. So what I'm looking for right away for me with planes is I go, here's the canopy. It actually comes back more like that. See, I'm not worried about these extra lines. I don't care, they'll disappear, okay? And then I go, and then this comes here. And then I go, how far out to the front is this nose cone, right? And then how does this come back, right? And I'm sort of sweeping my lines. I'm never doing this. Does that make sense? I'm never doing that, okay? Because that's just gonna give you a non-mechanical line, okay? And then I'm gonna go, how far back is this shape? They usually have this little thing right here. And I like to put these things in here because that breaks up the silhouette again. They usually have these little, I don't know what they're for, they're little fin things. And then I'm gonna go, how far back is this to the tail? How vertical is that tail, right?
Do you do the measuring tape?
No.
Where you raise it? Okay.
I'm eyeballing
Okay.
because I gotta train, and then I go, here's the leading edge of the wing, right?
Yeah.
So then I go, where does that land in relation to this canopy?
Oh, okay.
If I'm okay with the canopy, then I can start measuring everything off that canopy, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then I go, okay, it lands, so there's a little shape right here that I like. And then there's this little part over the canopy. This part, and then it breaks up the nose cone right here, which I like too. A little thinner right there. And then I'm gonna flip this because I wanna get a good angle on this, and I wanna thin it out a little bit. Okay, and then I'm gonna come back here. Okay, and then I'm gonna go that edge of that thing, and I just eyeball it, lands right there in relation to this shape. Does that make sense? And then I'm just gonna go, comes out to about there and about there. Okay? Now again, I can adjust that if I need to. And then the other one lands right about there.
So you are not worried about like perspective of the
Of course I
wings,
am.
you know?
Of course I'm working
Oh,
on
okay.
perspective. These are not out of perspective.
I
Does that
see.
make sense?
Yeah.
Of course I'm worried about perspective. Are you talking about like building a perspective
Yeah,
grid?
yeah.
No.
Yeah, like building the wings,
No.
like extruding from the body.
No. I want to throw this down on location accurately and also with a little bit of interpretation involved. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
But no, I'm not going to sit here and build a grid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what am I doing then? I'm building this like, I'm going to build a drawing with no life to it for sure,
Yeah.
right?
It becomes stiff, right?
Hmm?
It becomes stiff.
No, it's going to become insanely stiff. Now, again, there's a time for that.
Yeah.
Like if you look at what Scott Robertson does where he really perspectives out all that stuff,
Yeah.
that is super accurate finished stuff, which is why I have a problem with that book being called How to Draw. That's not how to draw. That's how to draw for industrial designers.
Right.
And it's a good book
Yeah.
for that. But when you go how to draw, I pity the kid who picks that up and goes, oh, and get me a drawing book. Then you go in there and go, what?
Yeah.
Like, huh? And then you're going to see their drawings, and they're going to spend, how long are they going to spend on those drawings trying to figure that shit out?
And
A
on the planes,
long
they-
time. Days. They're going to spend days on that.
Months.
And then they're going to end up with a drawing that's really stiff, and they're probably going to get really discouraged because they're going to go, this isn't what I want to do. Like, I want to throw this shit down and it's cool. You know, you want it to be cool, right? I mean, one of the things with this stuff, and normally, like in other classes, I go, don't tell me you did something just because it's cool. Give me a reason for it, right? But in this class, I mean, part of what we're doing, I want it to look cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, the wheels and things I'll start building also in relation. This one is way out of, that should be a little more like that. I'll start building these wheels, and I got to make sure where's this ground plane in relation to this whole thing so these wheels aren't getting wonky and away from each other, right? Like right now they are, and it's turned a little, and that's okay. And then okay, so let's say that I like that. I would adjust it more and all that.
What about sometimes for like say if you maybe drew something like a bit too long or like especially just like too long.
Too long?
Like say if like the wing that you drew right now
I just go in and correct it.
like
Like actually this wing could be a little longer, but I think it's long enough. No, okay, go ahead.
like I know with pen it's very permanent, of course. Like well permanent quote. But like say if you drew the wing really too long, would you like put the marks would you do or would you line?
I would just go and do what I'm doing. Like there's 3 lines there. Or if this is too long, then I'll just come in and cut it off here. And then as I build my drawing,
Just ignore the line.
I'm building,
Extra
as I go in and I start committing to certain lines and I start darkening things and punching things, those things disappear. And it's also, I love having that stuff in the drawing because I love those construction lines. It gives the drawing a lot of vitality. Does that make sense? And I like that. So I'm gonna go, let's just say that's fine. And I'm gonna go in here and go, okay, now I'm gonna go into the interior a little bit and draw this, the flap, this. There's a little business under here, I'm not gonna worry about it. And then the thing that's nice about this kind of stuff is it has these manufacturing lines on it, which gives me a lot of stuff that tells the viewer what's going on, and I have to do less work, which I like, right? I always want to do less work. And then, so let's go in here, and I'm just gonna pull some lines in here.
What if the airplane has some sort of like a camouflage pattern on it? Do you draw them in shape as well?
I just do it with a marker,
Oh, okay.
right? Now, if I didn't have a marker, I'd probably come in here and I'd find that shape and I'd just do a hatch line.
Okay.
I'd find that. And then I go, how light or dark is it? And that's going to be determined by how far apart my line is. And as long as that shape feels right and it's wrapping over this form, it'll read as camouflage.
Okay.
Real easy to do with marker.
Okay.
you know.
And how do you make the canopy transparent? Like
I'll show you that in a sec.
Okay.
But if I was building this, you know, there's going to be cut lines going over this, so this will tell the viewer that that leading edge is coming and curving over, and I'm not making that up, it's really there. Okay?
Kind of like when a muscle kind of like wraps like that.
Yeah, but you got a cut line here.
Yeah, but just with the machine.
Okay, so let's say that I'm fine with that. And okay, so I've had a student in here before, she's really good. And when I was talking about this stuff, this core and all that stuff, she's like, well, the Terminator, I go, it's your broad stroking here. I'm broad stroking here. This is fast sketching. I'm not sitting here going, I'm doing this very long, observed drawing, okay? I mean, I'll do that in other situations or whatever, okay? But I'd probably come in here and just broad stroke this and just get a core going down the center of it. And it already starts to turn it a little bit, okay? And then I'm gonna go, that's gonna fade a lot, see how it's fading?
Yeah.
Because this is only a, I think it's a three, yeah. But so I have a 3 here, I have a, I think an 8, yeah, 8, and I think it's 6, yeah, 6. So they're far enough apart where I get a value shift, right? You don't want to go 3 and then a 4 or 5. You have to look and go, okay, that makes a considerable value shift without being too much. You know, I don't want to go from this. I mean, sometimes you might, not in this case, to this. You know, now sometimes that might happen, but it's probably not going to happen on a rolling surface like that. Let's see how dark this one goes. But when I use markers, I really don't want to use more than 3 for the most part. Partly because even though that sketch bag of mine is ridiculous and there's way too much crap in it, I'm trying to be as light as I can. My problem is that I love all this shit, all this stuff, right? I love all this.
Fancy tools.
Just, I love all this stuff.
You like having basically everything.
Yeah, but I just love this stuff. Like, you gotta remember, my brain was searching for all this my whole life and didn't know it was searching for it. And then I stumbled into Art Center, I saw their industrial design program, and I went, oh my God, there's the Rosetta Stone right there. That's it. That's what I've been waiting for. And then when the culture around there is very much around, back then, around this kind of stuff.
The markers and everything.
Just all this fun pen stuff and all this kind of stuff. And I just love this stuff. I love all these techniques. I love, you know, that you can throw this stuff down real fast, and it's just, I love it. You know what I mean?
Sometimes is like when I'm going on tour, I'll pick up random pens because like different pens they all have different feelings to them. Like,
Well, everything has a different feeling to it.
pens, even like ballpoint pens or like office pens, like that.
That's a little better. Now, when I'm doing, if I'm going to go in and do, you know, wherever the light is, I'm just going to put it here. I'm going to go to my first highlight. Okay, see how that's starting to turn already? Okay, now I could come in here maybe and maybe build a little darker core within the core. Maybe. So it's turning very simply, right? Now, I've got that. I've got this here. I'm gonna take this dark, I don't know if I'll like this, but let's just try it. I'm gonna go a little lighter on the top.
Do you prefer stone paper? Like a
This.
Yeah,
Desert Storm.
like what about the cooler one? Do you like that one? Or
The one, which one?
send you that cool,
gray paper.
The which one?
the cool tone.
Yeah, if you guys like that, that's fine.
Okay.
Like what,
I like warm. I just always have liked warm. If I'm doing like inside of a jazz club or something, I might go with a cool.
Oh,
Or like, you know, an interior space or whatever.
because like I always had some issues like trying to figure out which kind of company to go for.
I like this.
Where'd you get it?
I'm not ever gonna tell you that. I get it. This you get at Kelly Paper, and Kelly Paper is weird. They're everywhere.
Really?
Hell yeah, they're everywhere. And it's called Desert Storm. This is called Desert Storm. This is the cards. There's two versions. There's a paper version and a cardstock version. This is cardstock. It's really smooth. Yeah, it's really nice. Does that make sense?
Does that one bleed through or no? The marker?
Yeah, that's
It's with you guys in the.
I already asked.
By the way, I don't give a shit if it bleeds. I don't. Because a lot of times I flip it over and I do a different kind of drawing on it. And I kind of like that there's some modeling and weird stuff going on in there.
Gross.
Doesn't bother me.
I like it.
But I'm not a scaredy cat. You're a scaredy cat.
So be everywhere in terms of like the paper are sold everywhere, or like the Kelly store is everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Kelly's everywhere.
They all have this.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why they're everywhere. It's totally weird. I think it's cool they're everywhere. But I don't care.
So Kelly paper, and that's called Desert
Storm. You guys might want to get together and buy a ream of it.
How much does it cost for a ream?
Like $35, I think. No, it's not. I mean, a ream of that. That's like that.
How many papers?
Two sketchbooks is what.
How many what?
How
So
many
it was
papers?
like
How
the-
many sheets? Oh, like this big?
It's like 500 sheets.
Oh. Do they come
So,
in, like,
look.
any sketchbook style at all?
Now I'm going to put just a touch of specularity on top of that highlight. Do you see how we're starting to get like a nice little
Yeah.
steel, whatever you want to call it, hard surface kind of idea, right? Now, let's go here. Let's see if I can do this small like this.
Like I've always liked how when like color pencils with markers and
So I'm going to take this one, and I'm just going to hatch this.
Do we need to purchase these markers?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
So I left a little highlight right there. And then I'm going to come in here. Let's try it with this. So I'm going to make, I don't know. We'll see how far this drops back. I'm going to put the little cockpit part there. And then that strut is going to go over to the other side, right? It's wrapping over the form, correct? So, but I'm going to do that with a marker. So it already puts it behind, right? Because now it's not as dark and it's more of a silhouette, right? So I'm going to grab this because I think this is going to disappear a little too much. There's stuff in here, okay? I guess I'll put that back in. It should go away a little. So now I've got a few things inside there, correct? So now I'm going to come in here. The trick with reflection and things like that is now, if I just come over the top of this and I put a reflection right over it, I've got glass. Does that make sense? Really simple. Does that make sense? So it's really simple, right? Now I can come back in here. That's glass. Maybe even here. I don't want to overdo highlights.
So can you go over when you use the white pencil and when you use the white ink?
This is a highlight. This is specularity.
Like,
You know what specularity is? Huh? Does everybody know what specularity is? Yeah, specularity is like, you know, when you're behind a car in the summer and it's got a chrome bumper and it's like, bing, it's got a like a blast of white, you know, that highlight. That's specularity. So this isn't specularity. So what I want to do with between the pencil and some sort of opaque white is I want to build specularity, right? But I don't, here's the thing, like I saw a guy in college one time, we were critiquing each other. This guy was a good painter and he did this portrait of somebody or other. And he didn't build up to the highlight on the forehead. So he basically went to whatever
Maybe medium.
value he went to, and then he went bing, and he hit the highlight, the specularity, like you get on your nose and all that, right? But it looked like bird shit on the guy's head because it's like you didn't build up to anything. It just looks like a bird shit on his forehead. You know what I mean? I mean, it really is what it looked like because he didn't build up to it. And why do I remember that moment? Because it was a big, oh, that's why that doesn't work.
Alright, so you keep talking about like there should be a gradual jump in value and stuff like that.
Right.
Like there should be no sudden change.
You know, because everything's not specular. Like, this is what always happens in this class. I do this demo, and then we go there, and they have this, and then all their highlights are this.
Yeah.
And it just looks ridiculous. It's like, I don't even know what you're telling me here. Okay, another thing is like your highlights. If you get a, you know, if you're doing like a little ding, like a little star thing, you know, that little idea, right? Then if you do another one over here, it has to follow the same angle,
Oh,
right?
really?
Uh-huh. So, like, think about it. If I do this and then over here I do this,
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't work. They're all going to follow the
It
same
doesn't
angle.
translate, right?
Right?
Oh, right, yeah.
And you got to be really careful with that kind of thing, okay? And it was interesting because I had this guy named Petrushka. He's still there, I think, at Art Center, right? And he was the class you always wanted for gouache. Petrushka was the guy, right? And he goes, don't overdo this. Don't overdo highlights. Especially don't overdo this shit, right? And then we had an assignment. We had to paint a car, right? In gouache. And then this guy came in, and just what people do for some reason. He had these star highlights all over it.
Oh, no.
It looked like one of those cheesy filters,
Yeah.
you know, that they put on you. Highlights over here. And
Have you seen my
24-hour
Instagram or
photo.
something?
my ex-girlfriend found me on Facebook, and then there's some picture on there where she's so weird now, but anyway, and she's like going like this, and then there's all these little ding, 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 all over the place. It's one of those things you walk in the market and they get you. Anyway, so he did that, and Petrushka would do the same thing I do. He'd work over people's work and all that stuff, and he goes, dude, even I can't fix that. He goes, that's a mess, okay? You know. And they were also at different angles. It just was a mess. You know what I mean? He painted the rest of the car actually pretty good, but that he screwed up. Okay, so let's look at now. I could take this. I could take a brush pen. Now, what's nice about a brush pen is that you really have a variety. You can go from really fine to really fat lines, which is really nice, okay? But what I'm going to start doing here is I'm going to say the lights, let's just say it's here. So we're sort of doing that, right? This way. Right? And then, okay, yeah, and I'll talk about something else here in a minute. Like another thing with this leading edge of the wing, I can also come in here and I can come in here and I can, right where that core is,
Oh, yeah.
that is going to turn that form this way, very simply, right? And then I could come in here and I could, there's a lot of things I could do. But see how that turned it, right? And it makes it really easy for me, okay? And then I'm gonna come in here now, I'm gonna go, well, my light's from above. So I'm gonna come in here. I'm going, that's not enough, so let's try this one. See how that popped that? And it gives me a sense of where the light's coming from, right? And I can do the same thing here, because now what am I doing? I'm thinking about light, but I'm also thinking about separation, right? I'm gonna separate that, and then I wanna separate this, from the background. Does that make sense?
Like it's kind of making like all the thin lines pop out on the outside.
It's showing light, basically. But it's also separating. See how that wing now separated?
Yeah.
Right? So it's just a lot, you know, it's a little nicer. And then here, I'm gonna do the same thing. And I would start going through here and popping things. Like here, when I have a surface break right here, I might darken it as it comes out from the bottom. I know that seems small, but look how much difference that makes. Nobody's gonna notice it, but it helps, right? And then here, I think I want a little more here. Maybe a little more here. This is still away. Now, again, here's a break. I might darken that a little bit. And then I might come on here. I am gonna come on here. Another thing I need to do here, I don't know if they're on here or not, they probably are, is these surface things now, right? You're gonna see when we go there, one of the big values of going to March Field that I'm hoping you guys get about it is going up and looking at something in 3 dimensions, a very complex form, in 3 dimensions, and going, wow, look at all the surface detail on this thing. They're not like this at all. They're not just clean like that. They're gonna have
That's simple.
They're gonna have that, and they have little rivets in it. I don't want to overdo that. They have little doors and things on them. They got little inset pull handles, like they have these little things where you go and you turn something and it pulls out or whatever. They're gonna have symbols. This one has these cool little look how much that helped. It's just getting stuff on there, right? I'm gonna pull a little there. Oh, actually, I'll do it here. Pull that out a little from the bottom. It's a crack going into under and away into the dark, into a darker idea, right? I'm gonna go here. I want to hit this a little bit. I don't know if I need to hit this as hard, so I'm just gonna go over it with my regular pin a couple of times. And if you notice, I hit it over and over again right on it. You got to learn how to do that, okay? And that's where that little thing we talked about, where you're kind of doing this and trying to make them equidistant and stop and start at the same place, where you're doing ellipses, you know. That's what gives you control. You need control for this kind of thing, right? Because this is not, you can't bullshit around with this stuff. It has to look like mechanical objects, not like wobbly balloon animals. You know what I mean? Because it's real easy for it to become balloon animals. I'm gonna drop this down.
So is it easier for you to draw this kind of stuff or to draw organic stuff?
Neither one.
Oh, okay.
Drawing's drawing
Yeah.
to me, which is what I'm trying to get you guys to. I'm trying to get you guys to go, oh, I see shapes. I don't give a crap what the subject matter is. I want you to don't even care about the subject matter is. Does that make sense? The only thing I'll say is when I go to March Field, it takes me about an hour or two to get back into this thinking. Does that make sense? It does take me a little while to get back into it. But once I get into it, I love it. I love doing this stuff too. I love drawing, huh? I love drawing. Let's just say that's the wheel. And then I'm gonna come in here and do the same thing with this missile.
You can draw a whole Millennium Falcon with this.
Oh, sure.
technique.
Easily.
That's really like cool. I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you show me draw cards like you should?
Yeah, we'll do that later.
The one thing that I find really interesting is how like even though you have like a line like that, I'm just gonna call it missile thing. The missile right there, and then you put like lines right there, but the highlights still very close to it.
Say what now?
Like you made it so the pencil is like in a sense over the line. Basically.
Uh-huh. A lot of times I'll go back in and reinforce the line. If I think I need to. So it's starting to get a little slicker. So let's go. I want to put something here because I don't have anything here and it's just too blank.
You want to draw your cover?
You know, this one has the Air Force symbol or whatever that is on it. You know, why do I want that? Because I want stuff on the surface. I don't want it just blank. You know what I mean? This one has a little cut line, kind of comes down like that or whatever. And I'm just looking for places where I can add. This should flare out a little more, I think. This also needs to get the same treatment as this over here. Now, if you noticed, when we threw this down, I threw all these down in big swept lines. Does that make sense? Now the reason I do that is because if I draw this, and then here's the wing, and I go, I'm disconnecting those two ideas. They will disconnect. And it's the same thing with a human. If I knock in that head, and then I go, the shoulders are right there, that means they're connected. Whereas if I draw a head, and then I go, here's this, and now here's this, they can disconnect. So whenever I can, I want to draw through that form. Same thing I tell you in live drawing. I tell you all the time, draw through the form, right? And what's interesting about that to me is like, see how that idea carries across to a plane? Like, that's why life drawing is important, because all those things you're learning in there are sort of things you're going to use in all kinds of stuff, right? Now, if I wanted to map out this ground thing, which I'm just going to make up, I could come in here with this, you know, map it out, and then I could do that with a brush pen. I can do it with this, whatever I want. Does that make sense? Nice and dark. Now, a lot of times what I do too is I'll go, here's the brush pen, or here's the shadow value, whatever, and get it all knocked in. And sometimes, because this is such a lit environment there, and I just do this a lot of times, I might put a little lit right against that shadow. See how it just pops it a little bit? I just like that. Does that make sense? And then I need to pull this probably back to here a little bit. You know, I don't want to overdo this, but I could even probably put a little highlight on the other side of those cut lines here and there, just to give them a little more dimension. So, okay, so a lot of these planes are metallic, obviously, right?
Oh.
We can just airbrush right over that.
Oh.
Why do you do that instead of just drawing it on there?
What do you mean drawing it on there?
Using the pastel on it.
Because it won't go down airbrushy like that.
Okay.
It'll go down as a mark.
Like this.
Oh, okay.
Too hard.
And this just,
The heated eraser is a magical tool.
it is.
I can't use a normal eraser anymore now. I'm trying to use that one.
I'm glad I came to class today to see this thing.
Huh?
I'm glad I came to
Now,
class.
I could also just do it on the canopy, with the canopy's taking some of that, right?
Yeah.
I might be able to get away with a little, I don't know if this is gonna be the right value. Might be too dark.
You use blue.
I could be
because
with, I
it's,
could warm up the bottom a little bit, because you'll see in that environment, the light hits the ground and warms up. See how that gets a nice little warmth on it?
Oh, right.
So then you start getting that old school kind of chrome effect.
Is there like an alternative medium to try with the same effect, or no?
With the what?
I would say, is there like an alternative medium you can do the same effect with, like colored pencil? Or?
Why would I want one?
I don't know, I'm curious.
Because we're not going to be taking the X-Acto out there with your gloves.
Yeah.
It's all
Well, if I really wanted to do, I would do this after, to be honest.
Oh,
Okay,
Doing
okay.
a
I do that in post, as we say in the biz.
Oh my god.
Who's the fizz?
Well, you know, you're a big on location guy to see with the X-Acto knife,
Yeah,
the
you know.
paper.
We got some little vials.
Mickey Mouse.
I actually do. I have a jar in my. I do. I have a jar in my
You're
thing
like
of powder.
a
Pepper shaker.
Like you're like an alchemist, Mr. One.
And he was like,
The art alchemist.
I kind of like that little hit.
Yeah.
You know, and I could even hit here maybe. Or-
so you use blue because it's the color of the sky.
Yeah, because it's basically when you go out there, you'll see it.
Oh.
Because these things are metallic, so they really, and I might have to go back here. They really reflect. They'll really bounce warmth underneath.
Yeah.
Then what happens is you have a lot of light coming from out here. It bounces up off the ground. It hits the underside. The blue is hitting the top.
Yeah.
So you have this warm, cool thing, right?
Yeah.
But then that's why you can really push these core shadows, because it pushes that core like a sandwich together, right? So it's like, it's lighting the bottom, lighting the top, and so the core goes right down that center. And it
not
just,
like-
and it really turns the form.
It's not like usual drawings where you see like a shadow, like the super dark at the right bottom. Instead, like it's like literally.
No, it's lit. It's like if you go wherever, Joshua Tree, someplace like that, and people, you can tell when they're not looking if they go out there painting, because their brain goes, oh, light's up here, very strong light, because it's a desert. Boom, and under the rocks they go, oh, it's, I cool it out and I darken it. That's bullshit. There's so much light in that environment that what it's doing is it's bouncing, and you'll see underneath it's really lit and really warm, so it doesn't go cool. And sometimes it screws people's brains up because they just go right to their stock solutions. That's why you don't want to go to stock solutions, because you got to know what you're doing. You got to know why this happens. And we just talked about that. There's a lot of blue carried up here, and then there's bouncing a ton of warmth off the ground because it's all dirt. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right.
I know what happens. And there's a lot of things like this where I just know what happens.
Actually, do you spray it with fix it, or do you?
I would if I was doing something like this.
Huh?
I spray everything with Fix-It.
Even ink?
No. I spray students with Fix-It.
So that they won't go.
And I use a neuralizer to get rid of Peter Hahn's bullshit.
I like to.
I gotta go look right here, boom, and I get rid of all their stuff. So I'm just BSing some stuff in here. Like I might even come in here back with this again. I'm just opening the wrong side. By the way, the only reason I'm wearing gloves, I just get sick of getting materials all over my hands all the time.
Oh yeah.
It's art surgery.
Yeah. And I do, I'm an amateur proctologist. All right, so let's go. I'm gonna darken that up a little. That one I'm just gonna let live a silhouette back there. I probably will look at something else here. Let's look at a different one. I just want to get a couple of shapes under here. Oh, there'd be another one here. There'd be another. Missile on the other side. So I'm going to use a lot of silhouette for this kind of stuff.
Makes it easier.
No, it just looks better. There's usually like a little thing back here too, and I can't remember how it works. And then maybe I'll go with this now. I haven't used this. Maybe put a little dot on here so I know which side's the brush. Maybe I'll hit the bottom and darken that up. That little pop helped. And I'll probably BS some technology under here. I mean, because I'm not looking at it right now, so. I might put a few shapes under here.
Yeah, on the compass marker, there's actually a little gray strip that shows you where's the brush on the side.
Yeah, right here. Yeah, it does tell you. Why? Why are you saying that?
Oh, you said you could put like a dot or something to label.
I know, but I don't like looking at that. I don't want to keep looking at that. If I just put an orange marker right there, I know which that is. Or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it could be anything. Now, this here, I feel like I need to reinforce a little bit. See how those lines are getting a little lost under all that dust? This one here really needs to get reinforced. I don't mind that one because it's sort of going, oh, and then there's this shape here. So I'm nice and simple with my hatching, right? Let's grab this.
Does the pastel ever clog the
Huh?
do the pastels ever like clog the nips of the pen?
It's not like I'm doing a lot of it. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that much of it. There's a million ways you can do this. I'm gonna do it. I'm maybe gonna do it down to, maybe I'll do it all the way down to here. I don't usually do that. Now I do want the chisel, I think. A lot of times I'll just sort of outline that. Trying to keep it somewhat consistent here. This is kind of drying up a little bit, so it's gonna be a little funky, but it's all right.
What does that serve as?
You'll see.
Don't ask questions. Just watch.
Oh, okay.
Good enough. And I have some better ones over here. So I'll just get a little graphic element behind it. Does that make sense?
So you just darken the background, right?
Yeah, so it's like,
Eden.
kind of like this one.
Oh,
Same thing, right? Just pops it. So this one I just want a little bit more, which I like. I'd probably do the same thing here. I'd go more solid here and then let it fade off on the edges. And then I go, okay, now I'm gonna make sure. So I probably should have went a little lighter on that because it's popping a little too much.
Can the marker bleed underneath the master face?
No, it doesn't usually. So I wanna make sure that that's a little better. See how it pops out a little better now? I'm gonna put a little there. That's way better.
So this really does teach you how to design with all these tricks.
Uh-huh.
Not wrapping these techniques.
It's not tricks. It's technique.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Right.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's all about design. That's a good point. It's all about
It
that.
forces you. You can't not think about it.
Yeah, you have to really think about design. I like that. That's a good observation, right? Because you don't, when you're doing this kind of, yeah, you have to really be thinking about what you're doing.
Because you can't really do willy-nilly. Oh, I'm
No.
just going to use the marker here because it don't look like nonsense.
No. And there's a million ways to do that.
Right.
There's a million ways to play around with these background graphic shapes. You know, I mean, and I'd argue this also, this shadow right here is also a graphic shape. It's just a graphic tool, right? To pop. It really grounds the plane on the bottom, you know. And then I come here and I go, well, now with that background, because I made it a little too overwhelming, but that's okay. You know, do I need a little more of this? You know, do I need a little, hit that a little harder? You know, pop it a little more. You know, do I want to do, I don't know if this pin even works. Or, you know, do I want to come in here now and sort of give it a containment line to pop it?
So when do you know that you can move on and draw something else from this sketch?
I'd be done with this one. This would be a warm-up. You know, and I could pop it a little bit that way, I could pop it a little bit with that. And sometimes when I'll do that, just like I said before, the drawing will flatten out a little bit and I go, oh, I gotta give this more form. It doesn't have enough form.
Can I see this tool?
They sell those at Blick, but don't go to Blick. Because I don't like Blick.
They're too overpriced.
No, they're assholes. They really are. Okay? And I don't care that they didn't fund the artist in residence thing, but I don't like the way they handle it. And I also don't like that person they put in charge over there does not care at all about having a relationship with us. And it's like, we keep you in business. Probably more so than Cal State Fullerton does. You know what I mean? Because I'm doing these kind of classes. They don't do classes like this over there. You know what I mean? And, you know, other things where we're using traditional materials. So I want to try and get a couple of pops in here.
I got some plant warehouse. They're doing
I love Art Supply Warehouse. I called Art Supply Warehouse for that, and they go, "Yeah, we're in." That was it. It was the only conversation. And by the way, Blake did that years ago too. They were really cool, but then they got a new person and they just don't care. So it's, to me, it's like, well, why should we support you? Okay. So drive the extra 15 minutes and go to. And by the way, that's a way better art store.
Like they've got
Oh, yeah?
It's so much cheaper.
And they got way cooler supplies.
Almost never.
like when I went to
Really?
Art Supply Warehouse with my friend over the break.
They have
We
lots
were
of sales.
going
Oh, yes.
stuff
It's
we
near
got
here
some
though, right?
supplies
No,
for
it's
art.
like going towards like Seal Beach.
Like I've gone up like several times,
Over there.
Alright,
so I
awesome.
kind of know.
It's
everything they had at
It's
play.
like close
When I
to
went to Art Supply Warehouse,
Okay.
they had like
Yeah,
Okay,
there.
I know.
more than half of like when it comes to stuff that they have there is like stuff you can't find at
A
Blake.
little bit higher
It's a
than
much
Amazon.
bigger store.
But it's just a better store. Okay, so look at, here's the wing. Okay. I just want to talk that little thing we were just talking about for a second ago.
Graffiti. And sculpting stuff.
Yeah, they do.
They have art books there.
I just want to blow this idea up a little.
They even have like the sketch wallets too.
Oh,
Art
yeah.
Supply Warehouse. They don't have-
Okay, see how that'll turn that form real quick,
Yeah.
right? And then if I go, now I could go on top of that and wrap over it and start, putting this stuff in there. And it turns it very easily. Does that make sense? Now, sometimes you'll see with like product design sketches and things like that, they'll do a complex form and they'll put surface contour lines over things that aren't really there. And the reason you're doing that is to tell the viewer how that complex surface form is working without having to do a bunch of rendering and all that kind of stuff. So you might, put a line, a line that comes down here and then wraps over a form, and and it's just to tell the viewer like, oh, I get how the surface is working. That's a complex form. Like I might not want to go in there, and it also makes it very clear. I might not want to go in there and do all this marker work and shading and value and all that. And you could do that quickly, right? But that doesn't really work for like, you're just tossing off a sketch. That's a little different, right? This one I just was playing around with that same idea, playing around with a different version of this, right? Also, I think it's so deadly quiet in here all of a sudden.
So amazed by your
Is that washed?
This is just watercolor.
Oh, okay.
So I carry this, and I could, I could come in here and sort of do what I'm doing with marker with this. Now, the beauty of this is while it's still wet, I can go in and really soften an edge. And the other thing that's cool about it, this stuff absorbs the watercolor really quick. So I'd have to do it really quick while I'm doing it. But, I mean, I can really regulate this, and go, I want to get a darker value inside of that value, right? I could go really light with it.
Is that also an
What's that?
The watercolor.
You can get black watercolor anywhere, literally
It's
anywhere.
in like a pillbox, right? Or
This is just a pillbox from Rite Aid.
Jackie has one too. She's showing us
Okay, he's like awesome.
Yeah, she got it from me.
Oh yeah, Tony from Started.
She was in my class. I hired Jackie because she was in this class and she kicked ass.
Dang, will you hire me?
Kick ass like Jackie, hell yeah. We got 3 students that were students here that are teaching here now.
Oh, wow.
X, who's over at Vans. Jillian, who's over at Vans. So we're interested in people like that who are going out and having careers, now come back and teach for us. I'm not as interested, like there's another student here who's just a fanboy. I mean, a real fanboy.
Anime.
And no, yeah, he likes that too, but it's mostly the stupid mechs and warriors and all that kind of nonsense. Really stupid stuff. But nice guy, but he's sort of flat-lined. His work is just flat-lined because he's not looking at anything interesting nor thinking interesting. And And then all of a sudden he lowered his bar. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go out and I want to be an entertainment designer. Okay, cool, you know. Then the last time I talked to him, it's like, he was going to a school, and I go, why are you going to that school? They don't have a good art program. I just want to get my piece of paper. I want to teach. And I go, oh, so you completely lowered the bar now. And he goes, I want to teach here. And I go, you're never teaching here. You are never teaching here, dude. I will make sure of that, because you don't have nothing to offer. You know what I mean? He doesn't. He's a fanboy with he's going to have no career experience. Why would I want to hire that? I got enough of those here, to be honest with you. There's like a lot of fanboys here, and I don't like that at all, okay? I don't want fanboys. I want people who've had interesting careers and all that stuff. And yeah, if it's entertainment design, cool. But I want them to have some sort of experience and come in with real skills, not just like, hey, I draw Max. You know what I mean? Huh?
Well, what does Jillian teach?
3D stuff.
And
Yeah.
for X?
And X teaches 3D stuff. And I think they're doing a really good job. Looks like X is doing a really good job. I haven't seen Jillian, but I've seen X, and he seems like he does a really good job. You can see there's a little bit of a blue tint in that shield, that glass,
Yeah.
right?
That came from the pastel as well?
Mm-hmm. Just that airbrush idea. Now you can also do this on white paper, that airbrush idea. It's nice because like you don't have to pull out an airbrush if you want to get that sort of an idea,
Right.
right? And you could use this. It doesn't have to be in Viscomi stuff. You could use that for other stuff.
Okay, cool.
You could go like on a white paper and take that and do a vignette around a character or something. You know, there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. All these techniques, you know, they're not
They're not for only one.
they're not just for one thing. Use them for all sorts of things,
Okay.
right? You know, and also think like this, just in the sense of like, how can I, all these ways I can use my tools. You know what I mean?
Or like, what can you use as a tool?
Or that too. I mean, I use credit cards for painting. I use cones. I use all kinds of stuff with paint to get interesting marks and things like that, right? Comb?
Oh, comb?
No, what'd you say?
Oh, what did you say? Combs or combs?
Comb. Like you comb your hair.
Oh.
It's the only reason I have to have a comb.
So like anything can be used as a
No.
tool.
Anyway, to make interesting marks, I use brayers. I use, you know, all kinds of stuff.
You don't comb your mustache?
I do actually. I didn't today, but little harder idea there on the warmth, right? And I could also go in with a little bit of watercolor and gouache, and I could hit that, do that. I could go in here and mix up a little either watercolor and gouache. And the reason I say watercolor and gouache is in my bag. I keep a tube of gouache, right?
Yeah.
And then I also keep a little,
Oh, just whitewash?
Yeah, this is just white gouache. And then I also keep I keep this little small watercolor set in here.
You showed us at the start.
Yeah. So if I have this and I have that, I can opaque up my watercolors without. I don't want to carry 15 tubes of or 10 tubes of gouache.
Right.
So that does everything. Okay. Also, I don't want to carry more than 3 markers. Okay, because I've seen people that carry like a bunch of markers on location. I go, why? You can just do that. You know what I mean? I'm like, why? I don't want to carry all that stuff. It's ridiculous. Also, I don't have. I have way less choices with edges with markers.
Yeah.
I have way less choices with like the way the washes go down. I might want a little more irregular wash. It's kind of nice. Now I use this a lot with people sketching and stuff. This, which I'll probably demo in here too. You know, where I'll throw down a line real quick and then I'll just start knocking all the values with that. And what I always say is that reduces my line mileage. Does that make sense? I'm reducing my line mileage. I'm not going in and going, like if I'm working with a pen, I'm not going and going, okay, I'm gonna hatch all that out. I just go whoop and I put a big tone there. It sort of kind of does the same thing a side of a pencil will do, and I can do it with, and I just have this for that, right? So I'm trying to keep this very simple. Does that make sense? I don't want to get overly complicated with all this stuff. But I also say, you know, I can use this and I have an entire full value, gray value marker set here, and every tone in between here, or I can carry 10 markers, right? And this can be a little more artistic too. It's gonna be a little less Biscomy looking and a little more artistic. This feels like it needs one more thing. It needs to get reinforced a little bit here.
So if you mix watercolor with the white wash, will they function the same way as wash? Do like
More or less. It's opaquing it out.
oh okay.
So yeah, more or less. I mean, it's not gonna be exactly like wash, but it's pretty good.
So you cannot replace it with wash when you paint with wash, you know, like
Well, I could use gouache instead
okay.
and do the same thing. Well, that helped a lot. You see that? A little value right there. And then I reinforce the value of that to turn it again. Because some of it's getting lost. It's getting lost a little bit under that chalk, right? Which is fine. I can just go back in and reinforce it. Same thing here. This is getting a little lost. Now, usually here, depending on what color it is, like I think this is usually, you know, I could come in and put that little insignia on there. I could come in here with this. You know, start popping a couple things. I have to do some stuff with that. Sometimes there's like a little thing back here. We'll have like a little antenna thing there. I just like things that sort of break edges and make things look a little more complicated. This probably get a little bit of value on it. It helps break that edge. This right here probably should have some value on it. And I like to mix it up where I'm not just using all marker. I might do a little bit of cross hatching. See, that gives it a little bit of a texture. It's just kind of nice, right? And that's enough. Okay, questions on this? Everybody gets it?
Yeah.
One more thing. So when you go and we're doing, I don't think I have any. You don't want to put a lot of this out because once it dries, it's not opaque like that anymore.
Some people put them in like airtight.
Yeah, I have it. I have that in downstairs in my car. Yeah, and it works great. Yeah. I don't know if I like that blue. Let's try it. Need more
Do you
blue.
kind of feel it when you mix the color? Like is there any like way to know that?
You want it's creamy, like sort of like heavy cream,
Oh, okay.
depending on how opaque you want to go.
Yeah.
And then if it's really opaque, you know, I want it pretty thick. I could come in here and build a little of that.
Oh.
Probably not light enough for here. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I could even maybe get away with that, yeah. So now we're adding to that blue, so you're sort of reinforcing that idea, but look how it like fades off, which is kind of nice, right?
That's really cool.
And this is probably gonna be too much. Well, let's see. I'm gonna get some of this. Let's just try this, because I don't want it too much.
Can you also paint the landscape with this way of like mixing watercolor?
Oh
and
yeah.
wash?
I mean, a lot of people do it.
So you don't have to buy actual wash to paint?
No.
Like
No, if you look at what Nathan Fauch does, that's all he does.
Oh, okay.
Everything he's doing is watercolor and gouache.
Oh,
What's
okay.
this bottle right?
That is just a water bottle.
You use it.
Huh?
So I don't
It
need
cracked.
separate
This
set
thing's
of
like
wash.
25, 20, that might be 30 years old, that
It's a
thing.
flask.
Yeah, it's a flask.
How's the quality of the brush that comes with it?
It's fine, I never use it. Just, you know, it's good to have in a pinch. You go, oh, you got a brush, I forgot, you know. That's about it for me. See if that held any color. I don't know if it did. Yeah, it did. It's a little too much. Hang on. I could have a little blast like that. Maybe there. Maybe there. It's a little strong, but it'll probably knock down as it's drying. It usually does. It usually dries a little less intense. You know, and I, you know, if I was going further with this, oops. I gotta get this out of here. I'm gonna keep thinking that's a well.
How do you balance between like making your colors dark but still opaque?
Well, you're gonna get, I mean, you just gotta
Or like
manage it.
opaque but like not too light by mixing too much water in?
Well, because I'm building everything up with watercolor, and then I only use this where I need it.
Oh, okay.
You know, I could have come in here and put a sky in here.
Yo. That was really nice.
How come you don't use the,
That's
this is
gouache
called a
and
well,
watercolor?
right?
How come I don't what?
Is this called a well?
Yeah, it's for this.
How come you don't use it?
I do sometimes.
Oh.
And what I'm gonna do here is try and get
That's sick. So that looks sick.
Let me get rid of my white line. I don't like it that much.
I really like how it's going from dark to like lighter.
Well, I'm gonna reinforce something here in a minute. So let's just take this.
How do you know that it's the right value for the sky color?
It's up to me.
Okay.
I mean, that's up to me. Unless I'm looking at it and I go, okay, I want to get it really accurate to what I'm seeing,
Yeah.
then I'll dial that in. The answer to all the questions you're asking around that stuff is like, I train my eyes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm not relying on, okay, now I'm going to apply my three value system. I don't like that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it's too light, but I might be able to get it down here a little bit. I don't know.
If you run out of the blue you use for the background, do you try to remix it or what do you do?
Do I what?
Oh, if you run out of like the exact shade of blue you did for the background, like do you
I'll
remix
just
it? Or-
cover it. I just did that. That's what I'm doing right now. I just went too light. So I'm kind of going, okay, do I need to,
I thought that you
It's
cannot
too
mix
light.
blue because blue is a primary color.
no, blue. This is really, the way I'm thinking here is more graphic than anything.
Okay.
I'm just thinking about graphic shapes. I want it a little lighter down here. Now, I could also, if I make a mistake, quote unquote, I want variation in this, so I don't care. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like, I want some variation. If I'm going to do this kind of thing in the background, I want some variation in it. So that doesn't bother me. Now, if I don't, then I'll make sure I don't get any variation in it.
So you only care about it looking good, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just have fun with it.
Now, also, if I was doing this for a job and there was some requirement for me to adhere to or whatever, then I'd have to worry, you know, I'd have to make sure that that's all working. Does that make sense?
I noticed that your paint becomes darker when it dries out.
It usually becomes a little lighter,
Oh.
but I mean, it can go either way. So what I would probably do is start to warm up near the horizon here, because it always, see that? It always gets a little warmer down and dirtier towards the horizon.
Yeah.
So I'd probably come in here and do a little of that, and then I'd pull that blue up higher. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I start to get this idea of a lit horizon.
That's like an illustration right there.
But it's old school illustration stuff. By the way, I hate that word old school. I shouldn't have said that. I hate that because then it acts like, oh, this isn't valid anymore. And yeah, it is. Of course it is. And by the way, a lot of people who are designing, they're still using markers, they're still working like this. And it's not because they're anti-computer or anything. It's because this stuff is actually pretty effective. Now here I might go, well, if I didn't put tape or something, I might come in here and try and soften this edge and vignette it. Mm-hmm. Just fades off, you know. And I'd want this to go just fade off these edges. You know, I'll start to do something like that. You know, and then I could come, I don't know if this will work.
I'm really kind of curious to see how you really did. Like we went there earlier to try like the pastels.
We already did pastels.
I mean, like, I'm wondering if you got like that wet, like you mixed it.
Do what?
Like if you got it like wet and you mixed it. Like,
Oh, I don't know, I've never tried it. But I will at some point.
Can you paint grass as well? Underneath.
It needs a little, it needs to dry. Hey, I got it, hang on.
We're sunscreen.
Okay, now I want the chisel and it keeps coming up with brush.
Bring a charger for the hair dryer.
It just looks like you called, like the brushes like you called, like you're on.
What I could do is I could start building. Oops, I screwed up. Like the tower back there, and I could start silhouetting a few buildings or something back there, right? And then I could come back in here again and go, well, maybe there's some windows back here and there. You know, there'd be this kind of stuff. I don't want that. You want, that's gonna have to be darker.
Antenna.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of this business. You know, and I could put a couple of indications of things back there, right? I could put like another plane taken off out here, just a silhouette. You know, I could come in here, maybe, and go warm up the ground down here a little bit.
Ooh.
Actually, I think it looks fine. Let me take a look at this.
I think you can apply the skill to make up, you know, like putting the color on the face. I don't know.
You know, now maybe I
that
could
would-
put something in front of it, you know.
Cool.
But now, you know, I'd have to finesse that more because I was fighting this a little bit. I would have finessed that a lot more. This would have probably just been a nice little vignetted shape, and that's it. And then I would have done this, but now I'm really pushing the idea of like, that's where that blue's coming from. There's a blue sky, and this is where that warmth popping up into there. I've now explained to the viewer what this lighting is doing. Does that make sense? Or I've reinforced it. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that sitting back there's not too bad. But I'm wondering if I can go just make sure it doesn't compete with it.
There's always something you can add to your drawing, right?
Yeah, but you gotta know when to stop at some point.
Just can't overpile it, right?
No, you don't want to overwork it.
Or overwhelm it.
Is the cool gray Copics, do they look bad on this paper?
I like to go with a warm gray if I'm using a warm gray,
Yeah.
or a warm surface, and a cool gray if I'm using a cool surface. And this stuff back here would just be indication-y stuff. You don't need to overthink it. Now, if I did this right and I thought about it, I probably would have put these shapes in here and then built around it. So I'm not drawing over gouache.
I kind of like how it looks though. It kind of gives like that kind of fading off in the distance look.
So, you know, I could start to build a little, just an indication of some sort of, now also, if I was doing this blue thing, I might when it hits down here, I'd probably really warm it up from the horizon up. Sort of like what we just talked about over here a little bit. Does that make sense? I would have pushed that idea more. Here I got to get a lot of opacity to cover this, what I already put down. So I'm fighting it a little bit. If I didn't have that there, I wouldn't need quite as much opacity. So, you know. Now I also have a whole set of gouache in my car, so if I want to just use gouache, I could do that too. But this just makes it very convenient. You know, this also makes it really convenient if I'm doing portraits on a plane, portraits in a cafe, you know, whatever. If I want to do a whole scene, a landscape or something, I got everything I need right here, which is really nice, you know. And it's in my everyday sketch bag, so anytime I want to paint, I can just pop that out and paint. And this is super valuable, you guys, watercolor, because it's a thing that will, that you're flexing your color muscle, right? Whereas, you know, a lot of times you're not flexing your color muscle because you just don't, you know, it's like, oh, I gotta pull out my oil pan, I gotta do this. Well, this, you can just go, all you need is water. I mean, really, you could do it with this and that. This, the only thing I don't like about it is I don't have quite as much control. This is fine if I'm gonna do value, and that's it. But if I'm gonna go any further than value, I probably want.
So can I do plein air painting by mixing watercolor and white gouache instead of like buying
Yeah.
gouache?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's what I'm saying. That's what, if you like Nathan Falk's work, that's what he's doing.
Alright.
That's all he does, okay? You know, I also probably could go, yeah.
Is Nathan Falk the guy who made Road to
Make what?
Eldorado? Like, is that guy?
He was on that, yeah.
Okay.
He does a lot of just quick landscape stuff. Really small, on tone paper like this with gouache and watercolor. Fawkes. I think it's Fawkes. Or Fox. I've heard it say Fox, I've heard it said Fawkes. I don't know which one it is. I want to put a little highlight on that nose cone.
F-O-W-K-E.
That's probably fine.
Yeah, that's enough, yeah.
And maybe I could put back here. This one's getting old.
Is that the,
Could put a couple lights back there.
is it acrylic?
Top of these things. This one is, yeah, and it's
Okay.
water based. You don't want to get the oil based.
Oh.
I want to put a little.
What's like a Posca pen? Water based?
Posca pens, I don't know. I just found these and I really like these, a Molotov.
But he doesn't
It's always good not to put your name on there. Molotov. It's like, why don't you just go the extra mile and call it Molotov? Like a what do you call a Molotov cocktail? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
All right, questions on this? Do you see how we now kind of push that? You know, we're starting to play around back here. You know, and I'm going to dick around with that. I might even be able to get, I think this would be too dark.
Why should we get the oil acrylic?
It doesn't work good on paper. I think that's mostly for like glass and stuff like that.
Yeah, oil is very tricky.
Yeah.
You know, we could indicate a few more things back there. And again, I'd probably put a plane taken off back here. And then the other thing I'd probably do when I put that plane there, if I put a plane up here, which would probably just be, I mean, just a really nothing little indication. Because I actually don't want to over render this little idea. I'd probably just do a little.
So how would you draw an airplane that is flying? Like, do you still draw?
Probably just do something like that, right? And then maybe a little highlight on there. And I might just pop a little more of the wing right there. But I don't want to over render that. You don't want to over render this. Like, I just want to get enough where the viewer knows it's a plane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's probably enough right there.
Now there's
I
some
don't like where it
story
goes
to
there.
this.
So now I feel like it can't stop there. It has to go. You know, maybe like that. And then I guess maybe I could even go, well, these things have those jet things that have like a flame on them. Do a little of that. Right? That make sense?
Yeah.
So now it's a little more of a finished idea, right? And when you're doing this for like a presentation or something, these little cool little things. You know, you go, hey man, here's my cool design in context. And if I was doing this on something, if this is a property or something, whatever was back here would relate to whatever the property is, right? I could also put like just a silhouette of somebody, you know, like a, you know, the guy that's doing this, or one of the utility guys, like right next to the plane here, just a silhouette, just to show scale. I might put 2 or 3 of the guys like standing here in front of it with the helmets on and the thing, you know, just silhouettes. And
Or
that's
the kind
it.
of staircase that they.
Yeah, I could put a
go on.
staircase on it. Yeah, right here. I could do that. And I could still do it, even though I've already drawn all this, I could still draw over this and draw some, you know, like the little thing they used to get up into the cockpit, right? And I got to reinforce one more thing. So I don't want to get too dark with this line because this line's going towards the light, but I also do want it to separate, right?
Yeah.
Here I've lost the line completely because of the blue. And if you notice, I'm always sweeping that line, right? And just getting, you know, nice, clean lines. You know, sometimes I don't want to pull out this or something else, and I just keep going over the same line and fattening it up. And sometimes I just like to do that, period. Sometimes I really want these big fat lines like that, okay? And I'm probably going to go way fatter on like this commie kind of stuff with lines that I would otherwise. Does that make sense? See, this one I got to be careful because I don't want that to start pulling too far forward from a value perspective, right? It's sitting in the background fine. I shouldn't put those lines there, I don't want them. But there you go. Make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do at Marchville. Oh, one other thing I want to say. If you're drawing these things in, one of the things, sometimes you'll get a plane that's sort of like, here's the plane.
Are you talking about the traditional plane, like?
Yeah, it could be anything. But I don't know what I'm drawing, I'm just making it up. Yeah, this would be more of a biplane. But you might have a wing. A lot of times you'll get these wings that start here, and then they sort of go this way. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They sort of do that, sort of, right? Why I'm talking about that is this is a spatial relationship thing. So the first time I went and drew at March Field, my teacher, I just totally sucked, okay? And it was really discouraging because I'm like, I think there was like, we had done some other stuff and I thought I was doing okay. And I was like, I don't know shit. You know what I mean? And then all my wings and everything, it's just a mess. And see how punching that value just keeps popping it forward? You guys see that? I want to make sure these lines are popping out of the, whatever you call it. So, where that wing is in relation to something else on the fuselage, right? In some cases it'll do this and I'll go, oh, it dies right there in the tail fin, right? And it starts, let's say the cockpit's here. It's a very short plane. Let's say that the cockpit's here and I go, well, that shoulder is right there, the start of the wing, right? And then they go, and it dies in that tail fin right there. I don't have to worry about the perspective. All I got to do is go, that ends there, and that starts there, and I connect them. And now I've got a very complex perspective problem solved because nature or whatever handed it to me. Does that make sense? So I'm always looking at these things in relation to each other. How are they falling? You know, because if I start going in, I start doing this.
just like drawing.
and I
paper.
start doing this, and I start putting this in, and I start building everything like that, I'm just gonna end up with this stiff ass drawing that I don't feel like, and again, there is a place for that.
Yeah.
But it's not when we're just trying to knock out a quick observational drawing.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It's just, right tool, right for the job, right tool for the job, right technique for the job, right presentation for the job, right everything for the job. Everything you're doing should be job related,
Okay.
okay? And also time related. How much time do I have?
Yeah.
I remember one time I was going out the door, and my boss goes, hey, we got that meeting in the morning, and it was like 6. And I never left at 6. I remember I was like, I'm gonna get out early today, and of course he drops that on me. And I go, what meeting in the morning? And he goes, oh, that meeting, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I go, no, you didn't tell me about this, He goes, well, that stuff you've been working on for, at that time it was based on Sword in the Stone. He goes, that stuff you've been doing for Sword in the Stone, I wanna show him that stuff. And I go, Ramsey, I haven't done anything for that other than those drawings you saw, those rough sketches. Oh, I need them in the morning. Okay, so then my brain goes into what can I accomplish by the morning?
Minimum material requirement we need for the next field trip.
I would just get a cool pen. You can get these anywhere.
Okay.
Uh,
Brown paper.
whatever kind of pen you like.
Okay.
And then and
Because
if
I
you
don't
can, like a white paint marker or gouache or whatever, just what you have that you can make those kind of
Okay.
things with.
Because I don't want to bring all these stuff with me there.
You can bring whatever you want. I could get a little bit of
Smoke.
smoke off that. And then I have to come in here and shape it.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I want to obscure that line a little bit as it goes towards because it goes obviously out of the thing, and then it tapers out and loses intensity. See what I mean? Then I could go back in and reinforce this with a little of this if I want to do that. Because if you look at the back of these things, they have these.
Flame.
Yeah, these big, they're like the Batmobile, they get
Yeah.
these flame things that come out, so I can justify that a little bit,
Like I.
right? Okay, and then, anyway, I can keep going, but that's enough. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, you could use something like this. These are really cool. See, that's a much drier line. This is getting a little weak, but there's still, when you use a felt tip, it's a drier line. Okay, this one's out of fuel, but as opposed, and then this one, I think this one's felt tip, yeah. That's pretty nice. Okay, but it's a drier line. Do you see that? And then this one is a roller ball, much wetter line. But what I like about it, look at that cleanliness of that line. Look at that, right?
So is that a ball at the tip?
It's a roller ball.
Okay.
And so's this one. This is a roller ball.
Oh, okay.
So these are all nice inky. I can come back in and get value out of them.
Nice.
Camden, are we boring you? See how that popped it?
So I can use just one black watercolor instead of like buying different.
Sure,
markers,
you
right?
could try that.
Okay.
Yeah, try whatever you want.
Yeah, I tried that.
I'm not gonna penalize people for experimenting.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I don't want a big sloppy mess, but now this needs another hit. This line needs to be hit. And then that needs to be re-hit. And then I could relight this down here. Then go back in and reinforce that core again. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this stuff. You know what I mean? It's cool, man. It's like This is the stuff I craved when I was learning.
So will you show us how you draw cars next time?
Oh, draw what cars? Yeah, we'll talk about cars.
Okay.
But it's not a whole lot different than that stuff.
Okay.
We're still starting off with real simple shapes, basic shapes, and all that kind of stuff. These are real nice for the fat lines. Right? So I think people, a lot of people think that this is a very clumsy tool, but you can do some really cool inky stuff with it.
Yeah.
I used to work with a guy that worked for me, and he would do these really cool, like if he was going, I mean, all of us did kind of variations of this, but I remember one time he was going on vacation, he was gonna go mountain biking, right? So he put a big 11 by 17 inch sketch up on his monitor. He said, you know, he'll, basically saying, it was him riding a bike, also cartoony. And it's, just said, hey, I'll be gone for the next 2 weeks. And it was super cool. I wish I scanned it.
Yeah.
And it was all inked and, it was cool. And I go, hey, Dwight, what'd you ink that with? And he's like, this. It was just a big fat Sharpie like that. And I go, dude, you're a badass. And he could also take these or a chisel thing and do all that bitchin' lettering because he actually apprenticed to a sign painter, right? Which is a long gone thing. But they would go, hey, we're doing that. I want you to do the sign for the tarantula ride at the carnival. And he'd be like, I don't know how to paint a tarantula. Okay, come here, I'm gonna show you. And that's how you learn, right? And then that's how he learned illustration, which is totally trippy. And then he worked for Big Daddy Roth. Like I told him, I go, if you would have came into my 7th grade class and done a presentation, I would have absolutely worshipped you. I go, I would have thought you were it. I kind of thought he was it anyway, because I'm like, dude, you did all this shit I thought was cool in the 70s. You know what I mean?
Shrine.
And he worked in that kind of style, But anyway, I like all these, I love all these techniques. I like all this stuff. You know what I mean? It's just my thing, okay? Which is why I like this class so much, okay? We're part of it. Well, okay, so no questions, we're all good, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. I think
So
I
what's
don't need
the
anything
homework
from
for
anybody,
next
right? Huh?
So what's the homework?
Just continue 4 pages.
Okay.
Just whatever you want.
Okay.